We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Tes Amud Aleph and Meseches Makkos. This is Makkos Daf 19a. The Gemara is continuing with a statement from Rava Barada Amar of Yitzchak. He says that by Bikurim may Emosai Chayavin Alein. From what point in time is the person Chayav on them? Rashi explains, Me'emasai chayav and alein misa, meaning when is he chayav misa, a zor ha'ochlan? When a non-Kohen eats bikurim, at what point in time is he chayav misa? That's the question. And he says, Mishayiru pnei habayis, from the time that they see the entrance of the Beis HaMikdash, meaning, as we said in the previous Amud, when they're brought into the Azara of the Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemara continues, Keman, who does that follow? Ki haitana detanya, it follows the Tana, the following brisa. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, Bikurim, when it comes to Bikurim, Miksason bachutz, if some of them are outside of the Azara, Miksason bifnim, and some of them are inside the Azara, so the halach is, Shebechutz, those that are outside, Harein kechulin, the chol devreim, that's considered like chulin for all halachas, and meaning to say, if Azar would eat it, it'd be no problem. But Shebefnim, but once it's brought inside the Azara, the Beis HaMikdash, Harein kehektish l'chol devreim, it's considered like hektish for everything, and that's why again the zor who's going to eat them is going to be chayiv. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Sheshes says, Bikurim, when it comes to Bikurim, Hanocha, placing it before the Mizbeach, Ma'akeves Bohen, that is Ma'akev, that is required, but Kriya, but the reading of the Psukim, Ein Ma'akeves Bohen, that is not Ma'akev, it is not required. And the Gemara continues, Keman, who does that follow? Ki haitana detanya, it's like the Tana of the following brisa. Rabbi Yossi says, Shlosha dvarim mishum shlosha zakedim. Rabbi Yossi says three things in the name of three elders. And one of them is as follows. Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Rabbi Yishmael says, Yochol yala adam meiser sheni bizman hazeb Yerushalayim v'yochlenu. One might think that a person nowadays can bring meiser sheni into Yerushalayim and eat it. But says Rabbi Yishmael, Vidinu, we can derive from Bechor that is not the case, because Bechor ton havos makom, because Bechor needs to be brought to the Beis HaMikdash. Meiser Sheni ton havos makom, and Meiser Sheni also, it needs to be brought to Yerushalayim. Ma Bechor eino ela b'fnei habayis, just like Bechor is only when there's a Beis HaMikdash. Af Meiser, so too when it comes to Meiser Sheni, eino ela b'fnei habayis. It is only noeg. One only can eat it in Yerushalayim when there is a Beis HaMikdash. But the Brisa continues, can you really learn from Bechor? Ma'ale Bechor shekein ton matan domim ve'imur and legavi mizbeach. When it comes to Bechor, so you have to place the blood and the innards on the mizbeach, and that's not true when it comes to Meiser Sheni. Meiser Sheni is not a carbon in that sense at all. Meiser Sheni is something you just bring to Yerushalayim, and you eat it in Yerushalayim. And so the Brisa continues, Bikurim yochichu, but Bikurim, that can prove the other direction. Meaning to say that Bikurim is not brought on the Mizbeach, but that is something also that is only noheg when there is a Beis HaMikdash, and so the same thing should be true by Meiser Sheni. But the Brisa says we can't learn from Bikurim either. Ma'ale Bikurim shekein tu'unim hanacha, because Bikurim, they require placing it in front of the Mizbeach, so you can't learn Meiser Sheni from Bikurim. Talmud Lomar, the Pasuk says, V'yachalta sham lefnei Hashem elokech, it says you'll eat there before Hashem, Makish Meiser lebechor, and in this Pasuk we have a comparison between Meiser Sheni and Bechor, because both are mentioned in this pasuk. Ma Bechor eino ela lifnei habayis, just like Bechor is only when there's a Beis HaMikdash. Af Meiser, so too by Meiser Sheni. Eino ela lifnei habayis, it's only when there is a Beis HaMikdash. And Rashi explains, Shlosha Devarim, again, Rabbi Yossi says three things from three elders, Azu Achas Mehen, this is one of them. Rashi says, V'kulan Shnuim B'Sifri, all of them are taught in the Sifri. Yachol Yala Adam, one might think that again, a person can bring Meiser Sheni up nowadays and eat it in Yerushalayim. And Rashi explains, Kasavar, the Tana holds, Kedusha Sa'aretz Lo Batla, that the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, it's not Batal, meaning there's still Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. But Tzarech L'Hafish Meisers, and what that would mean is that a person is still required to separate Meisers. V'ka'amar Yachol Yala Leno v'yochleno b'Yerushalayim, below Pidyon, and the Brisa is saying one might think that a person can bring that Meiser Sheni up to Yerushalayim and eat it without redemption. And so Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, Lefikach ton bayis, the Brisa again is bringing a source that it does require a Beis HaMikdash. Well, a Kamei Parech, and later on the Gemara is going to ask, Ma'ishna Bechor de Pshitale, why is it that Bechor is so obvious that you need a Beis HaMikdash? Over Meiser mi boile, but when it comes to Meiser Sheni, that the Brisa has a question. And the Gemara continues and brings its proof from this Brisa, V'im Isa, if it were true that Bikurim required Kriya as well, there was a requirement to read from the Psukim, so Lifroch, so then the Brisa should have asked in the following fashion, Ma'ale Bikurim shekein tu'unin Kriya v'Hanochet, should have said that Bikurim is unique, because they require both Kriya and Hanochet, just said Hanochet in this Brisa, and so you see that this Tana also holds that Kriya is not a requirement. But the Gemara says, Amar Rav Ashi says, Nihidi kuvaleka, even if we said, granted that we said that Kriya is not required, it was not Ma'akev, but mitzvah mileka, but isn't there a mitzvah? There certainly is a mitzvah to read the psukim. V'leima mitzvah v'lifroch. So if you're bothered by the fact that the Brisa doesn't include Kriya, but still you should be bothered by that, even if it's not required, the Brisa could have said that it's a mitzvah to read by Bikurim, that is a unique feature of Bikurim, and that could have been that could have been included within the refutation of why you cannot learn from Bikurim. And so in any case, whether or not Kriya is Ma'akev, you still have the same question on the Brisa. And so why wasn't Kriya mentioned in this Brisa? Elamar Rav Ashi says the reason why Kriya was mentioned has nothing to do with whether it's Ma'akev or not. But Kevan De'ika Bikurei Hager, since you have a convert who brings Bikurim, and when the convert brings Bikurim, there we don't read the Psukim. Deboy Lememer, because one of the requirements is to say, when you read the Psukim, you have to say, Asher Nishba La'avoseinu, that he swore to our fathers, and by a ger, by a convert, that's not true, because his fathers were not part of that oath. Velo Matziyamar, he's not able to say that. So lo psikole, so therefore it's not true across the board, and that's why we don't mention Kriya over here in this Bryce. It's no proof one way or the other. But the Gemara continues and asks, V'lahadr dina v'teisi b'mahatzad, but why not just learn from a mahatzad? Essentially, what we should learn is from a tzad hashava, common denominator. We should learn out Meiser Sheni from the combination of Bechor and Bikurim. Why doesn't the Brisa do that? Instead, the Brisa again resorts to a pasuk, which compares Meiser Sheni to Bechor. And the Gemara continues and answers, Mishum de'ikol mifrach, because on that there would also be a refutation. Ma'al hatzad hashava shebehen, because what is the common denominator if you're learning from both Bikurim and Bechor? But they both have in common Shekein Yeshba and Sad Mizbeach, that it's something to do with the Mizbeach. Bechor, of course, parts of the Bechor, the dam and the innards are offered on the Mizbeach. And when it comes to Bikurim also, again, you have to have Hanochi, you have to have placement before the Mizbeach. So there's something to do with the Mizbeach that's not true by Meiser Sheni. And so therefore, even from the combination of Bechor and Bikurim, we cannot learn out to Meiser Sheni. But the Gemara continues, Makkos Daf, but what exactly does this Tana hold? Ikosavar Kedusha Rishona Kitchel Ashaita V'Kitchel Lasid Lavu. If this Tana holds that the original Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael that was Kadosh at that time and it continues to be Kadosh, so then Afila Bechor Nami, so then even when it comes to Bechor as well, as Rashi points out, you're allowed to offer on the Mizbeach even without a Beis HaMikdash. So if the Kedusha is still there, so still you can have a Mizbeach and you can still be Makriv, you can still have Bechor. And Rashi explains, Ikosavar Kedusha Rishona Shal Bayis Kitchel Ashaita V'Kitchel Lasid Lavo. If the Tana holds that the Kedusha Rishon of the Beis HaMikdash is still continues to have that Kedusha, Ki Hechi Desvir Le B'Kedusha Sa'aretz, just like it's true by the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, again that Rashi mentioned above, that this Brisa clearly holds there's a Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, and so also there's a Kedusha of the Beis HaMikdash. V'Kami Boy Le Mi Karina Bei Hashta Below Choma Lifnei Hashem Elokecha. Oh lo, and the question over here is, when we don't have a wall, is that still called Lifnei Hashem Elokecha? V'Kaposh and Meiser Mi Bechor, and we're trying to learn out Meiser Sheni from Bechor. But again, if you're holding that the Kedusha Rishon is still there, Afilu Bechor Nami, so then even by Bechor, Yikrav V'Yochel, you should be able to offer it and eat it. The Hamandi is like Kitchel Lasid Lavo, because the one who holds Kitchel Lasid Lavo, Svir Le Makrivim Afa Pishain Bias, holds you're allowed to offer Karbanis even without a Beis HaMikdash, Kedamina B'Megillah Nikris, like we say in Megillah. And the Gemara continues, Ikosavar, if the Tana holds Kedusha Rishon and Kitchel Ashaita V'lo Kitchel Lasid Lavo, that the Kedusha of the Beis HaMikdash was Kaddish at that time, but that Kedusha is no longer V'lo Kitchel Lasid Lavo, so then Afila Bechor Nami Tiboy, so then we should have the same question that we have by Meiser Sheni, we should have by Bechor as well, if there is no Kedusha. So the question could be, could we eat the Bechor without a Beis HaMikdash, as Rashi says, V'ikosavar Lo Kitchel Afila Bechor Nami, Tiboy will have a question even by Bechor, meaning V'ikosavar Kedusha Sabayis Bottle, if the Tana holds that the Kedusha the Beis HaMikdash is bottle. Umi boile b'meiser, and the question by meiser is, ho'el ve'no tzarech lebayis, since there's no need for a Beis HaMikdash for meiser sheni, imesachel b'Yerushalayim lefnei Hashem karina bei, if that's eaten in Yerushalayim, is that still called lefnei Hashem? Ilo, or is it not? So afila b'chor nami, so even by b'chor also, ki agavna ti boile, you can have the same kind of question. Kagon b'chor shenizrak damo, let's say at a b'chor and the blood was already sprinkled, it was already offered, v'chor of habayis and the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, v'adayin b'saro kaim, and we still have the meat in front of us, ma'o she'yochlu, can you eat the meat or not? It's the same question by Bechor as it is by Meiser Sheni. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Ravina says, Liolam Kasavar, really the Tana holds, Kitchel Ashaita V'lo Kitchel Lasid Lavo, that the Kedusha of the Beis HaMikdash is no longer. V'hachan over here, B'Bechor Shenizrak Damo Kodem Chorban Habayis, again we're talking about a Bechor where the blood was already sprinkled before the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, V'chor of Habayis, and then the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. V'adayin B'saro Kaim, and the meat is still around. U'makshinon B'saro Ladama, but the reason why it's so obvious by Bechor is because we understand that there's a comparison between the meat and the blood. Madamo b'mizbeach, just like the blood, it has to be with a mizbeach. Af besaro b'mizbeach. So too, when it comes to the basar, there has to be a mizbeach. Umakish meiser lebechor. And so then the brisa ends up saying that we compare meiser sheni to bechor, because that's the conclusion of the brisa, that the pasuk has both bechor and meiser sheni mentioned, and so we learn meiser sheni from bechor. But the Gemara asks on that, but if you're now saying that by bechor, the reason why we know it is because of a hekesh, that we compare the basar to the dam, so then that means that we're learning something from a hekesh, from something that was already learned from a hekesh. You're learning meiser sheni from bechor through a hekesh, and bechor itself is really learned through a hekesh, and you're not able to do that when it comes to things that have to do with karbanos, with kodshim. And the Gemara answers to that, meiser dagon chulin, who when it comes to the meiser sheni of dagon, that's really not considered to be hekdesh, it's considered to be chulin, and therefore you're allowed to learn from a double hekesh when it comes to meiser sheni. Rashi explains, when we're learning Meiser Sheni from Bechor, we're talking about a Bechor again, that doesn't require Beis HaMikdash anymore. Dumya de Meiser asking, and similar to Meiser Sheni. And the reason why it's so obvious that you're not able to eat, the reason is because the basar is compared to the dam. It says you're going to sprinkle or throw the blood on the Mizbeach, and then it says basar. And we learn from there that at a time when it's fit, when you're able to do zrikas dam, then one can eat the meat. And not from the time that the mizbeach is destroyed. And so again, over here, and especially since we hold kitsha l'shaita velo kitsha liyasid lavo, so therefore again, if everything has been destroyed, there would not be any opportunity to bring on the mizbeach, and therefore again, by the basar, you're not going to be able to eat it. But the Gemara then asks, if we're learning basar from dam with a hekesh, chozer malamed al meiser behekesh. Now we're going to learn from meiser with a hekesh. Hakaimelan bezvachim bezim akoman shein lameden bekachim lamed min alamed, that you're not allowed to learn hekesh from hekesh when it comes to hektish. And the Gemara answered chulin, who it's really considered chulin meiser sheni over chulin lameden lamed min halamed. And when it comes to chulin, you are able to derive, let's say, from a double hekesh, one thing that's learned out from another thing that's learned out. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yotes Amid Beis.